but I would like to introduce the folks who are we're absolutely delighted to have here tonight. For the United States Congress, House of Representatives, Oregon's 6th District, Andrea Salinas. For the Oregon House of Representatives, as Andrea Salinas' candidate opponent was not able to be here. For the Oregon House of Representatives, District 24, the incumbent, Lucetta Elmer, and her challenger, Lisa Poole. For Yamhill County Sheriff, running unopposed, Sam Elliott. The sheriff is the most venerable office that one can run for in human history. The only public office that is longer standing than the office of sheriff is the office of, if you will, king. And so Sheriff Elliott is running for the most valuable offices that we will vote for. And for Yamhill County Board of Commissioners, position 2, the incumbent, Lindsay Berschauer, and her challenger, Bubba David King. I would like to introduce you to another important person this evening. Our timekeeper, Fred Freeman, is sitting here in the front row. Each of the candidates, as they're speaking, when they get to 30 seconds left in their speaking time, and he will wave the sign so that one cannot miss it. We beg the candidates, please, to respect the timing as well. Now, right at this moment, I want to introduce to you the president of NAMI, Yamhill County. Is the person who actually put this whole thing together tonight, and happens also to be my wife, Jean Beck.
That he did. Good evening. I'm Chief Beck, President of NAMI Yamhill County. Thank you for joining NAMI Yamhill County for our 2024 Candidates Forum. Before we begin, I wanted to note that next week, October 6th to 12th, is Mental Illness Awareness Week, and World Mental Health Day is October 10th. We're delighted to have you with us tonight. We welcome all of our candidates this evening, and thank you for coming here to share their thoughts about their candidacy and how they can be of help in advancing NAMI's goal and alleviating the burdens of mental illness. Finally, I want to express our appreciation for their volunteerism and time-consuming commitment to run for and serve in public office. As you may know, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is America's largest grassroots mental health organization whose mission is to improve the quality of life of individuals living with mental illness and of their families and friends through support, education, and advocacy. NAMI Yamhill County is one of 15 advocates in Oregon and one of 1,100 affiliates nationwide. NAMI sponsors educational events, support groups, and classes to help individuals and families understand better how to live with mental illness, begin the process of recovery, and sustain wellness. Importantly, we work to influence and improve state and local health care and government systems as they relate to individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now I will return the program to our moderator, David Beck.
Easy. Our program will begin tonight with candidate self-introductions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to talk about the geographic areas that he or she represents, why they're running, what particular experiences they have to deal in dealing with mental illness or advocating for better treatment and care for those with mental illness. After these introductions, those introductions will be 2 minutes in length. After these introductions, candidates will be presented with questions developed by the NAMI Yamhill County Candidates for Committee, and they'll have 2 minutes to address each question. After addressing the NAMI questions, we'll turn to questions written from the audience. If you've not yet written a question, please see the folks out at the green table. They will take your question, and then they'll feed them to me later. Candidates will have 1 minute to address an audience question. The forum will conclude with a 1 minute closing statement from each of the candidates. And each of these candidates, each of the statements and the answers to the questions will be done on a random basis, so that and there is somebody drawing those names of who will speak when each candidate will speak for either 1 or 2 minutes, as I said, and they'll be notified by our timekeeper when 30 seconds are up. Candidates will please adhere to the allotted time. No candidate signs or visible campaign materials will be allowed at the table, although, as you saw, candidates were available outside and will be around after the forum is over if you wish to talk further. Also, please note that public media members are in the audience tonight, and in particular, we're happy to have the McMinnville community media here doing the filling, and one can go to MCM-11.org and then click on the YouTube button to find a recording. And if anyone who missed this opportunity tonight, they can always watch the replay on YouTube. Now, written questions can be provided by, as I said, by the audience and given to the folks out at the green table. Please address your questions to specific candidates. I will read as many of those as time permits, but we must be out of here according to the rules of the House by 9 p.m. So we'll try to move along quickly on those questions. The candidate subject to your specific written question will have a minute to respond, and the challenger then will have a minute after that to respond. Candidates have not and will not be provided with the written questions in advance. Okay, so I think it's time to begin. The first question, as I said, will be chosen. Okay. First question will go to Congresswoman Salinas. She does not know the question ahead of time, nor do any of the other candidates, but let me start.
Today.
Oh, sorry. It's lunch. Okay. And so, Madre Salinas is first with her interruptions. All right. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, right, Gene?
Well, good evening, folks. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Congresswoman Andrea Salinas. I currently represent the 6th District, and I think most of you know it covers all of Yamhill and Polk County, a good portion of Marion County, mostly west of I-5, and then a good portion of, a small portion of Washington and Clackamas counties as well. So for folks who don't know me, growing up, my parents taught me and my sister the value of hard work and never giving up. They taught me that change is possible in a single generation, but we all have to work for it. And these lessons have really guided me both through life and my career. But the one thing we never talked about or discussed was mental health, even though several members of my own family really struggled with mental illness. My own sister struggled with the effects of trauma and depression for years. In fact, she attempted twice to take her own life as a teenager. So I know from personal experience what it's like to watch your loved ones suffer. And that experience made me realize how important it is to have these hard conversations, to destigmatize mental illness, and to work toward wellness. And that's why I've made mental health one of the top priorities in Congress since day one. I've been working hard to combat the stigma and make care more affordable and accessible to all Oregonians. I've introduced legislation that would expand telehealth in rural communities, promote peer support services generally and more specifically for firefighters, create a national mental health outreach and awareness campaign for Latinos, and make sure that Medicare and Medicaid offer mental health services. This is just the tip of the iceberg. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Mental Health Caucus, I'm proud to be a leading voice in Congress and want to continue to do this work as we move forward.
Wow. Berschauer for next 10.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Yamhill County Commissioner Lindsay Berschauer, and this is my 4th year serving as a county commissioner. I came into office during COVID, so we did not get to do a NAMI forum in 2020, unfortunately. But the first 2 years of my term really defined a lot of the values that we have around mental health and addiction. We saw a lot of folks suffering from isolation during COVID. Our kids were not in school, so they were suffering as well. And our addiction rates have gone up in the county. And so that has really informed a lot of the policy decisions that we've made in the past 4 years. When I ran for office, I really wanted to open a recovery high school to try and tackle addiction early. I think if we can get to these kids early and put them in an atmosphere and an environment that they have adults that are peers of recovery but can really wrap around them and help them get out of it early, we're going to be better off as a society. But personally, I also have experience with this. My cousin...
Wonderful. So that's supposed to be hard.
My cousin is, she's a year younger than me, and growing up, we were always kind of competitors. She's a brilliant, beautiful young woman. She was a statistician for the U.S. Forest Service, sorry. So she used to travel the world, and once she had her daughter, things really changed quickly. She started struggling with mental health, and eventually she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. As she unfortunately lost her marriage fell apart. She lost custody of her daughter. And I really have seen my family, even though she has a loving family and loving parents, I've seen them struggle to help support her and fight for her through a healthcare system that's quite challenging. And she doesn't even live in this state. And so the challenges that we have in Oregon are even greater. So I can personally relate to Mecca in the room. Up.
Mr. Kane?
Spike, third on these forums here, and every time I sit up here, I feel like everything in my head goes right out the window. So, my name's Bubba King. David is my real name, but I've gone by Bubba my whole life. Really honored to be up here, especially with these folks, everybody that is here. I'm running because I love where we live. And I started getting involved in my community. I live outside of Newburgh. Several years back, I've always kind of had friends with a lot of people, or lots of different walks of life and different areas in the community, whether it's George Fox or city council people or wineries, things of that nature. And so along the way of getting involved in the community, I became the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I've owned businesses in town, and I have a barn that I very much love, 11 acres just outside of town. And I think that what inspires me at Ron is that I think that every board would need representation from all walks of life. And right now, I don't see that on our county commissioners board. And so it's pushing me to want to have that representation for not only Republicans, but also Democrats and non-affiliated voters, because our county is made up of all three, of almost equal parts. So I think that I can tell you stories. We all have been touched with mental health or addiction things in our lives, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later, depending on what those questions are. So save all those fun experiences for later. Thank you, guys.
Sure, Elliott.
Good evening. My name is Sam Elliott. I am currently your Yamhill County Sheriff. I was appointed in December of 2023. I have worked in Yamhill County in law enforcement for the last 23 years. I worked for the McMinnville Police Department for 15, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 8. I have held pretty much every rank within the law enforcement structure, starting as patrol, spent many years as a detective, and then a sergeant, captain, and then now sheriff. What is, I think, really relevant to tonight and to the position of sheriff is the intersection between folks that wind up in crisis or wind up exhibiting behaviors that get kind of corralled into the criminal arena to be dealt with in the community. I have seen a lot of folks who are in the midst of crisis, and now as sheriff and running the county jail, dealing with folks that really are suffering significant mental illness and addiction that are incarcerated in the county jail, and trying to provide meaningful services to them to interrupt that crisis. So I really feel for a lot of these folks that wind up in the jail and trying to look at ways to be more impactful to help them in their recovery. Unfortunately, there are a lot of tragedies of bad examples that can be cited, but I was an attendee in 2019 of the 40-hour CIT class, and I'm a huge proponent of what that training provides to law enforcement and how that can be put into practice on the street when encountering individuals who are in the midst of crisis.
Miss Elmer?
Hi, thank you. My name is Lucetta Elmer. I'm the state representative for this district, District 24, which includes most of Yamhill County and a little bit of Polk County. And I'm just finishing up my first term, so I went into the legislature, was sworn in January of 2023, and then finished the short session here this year, 24. And I grew up here in Yamhill County, out in Willamina, on a little farm, and went to college at Linfield University. So this really is my home, and I'm very happy to be able to have a chance this period of time to serve and to give back to a community that I love so much. And I also just want to say that I've had a chance to actually talk with everyone up here, and even those that I thought might be here that aren't up here tonight, that are running this year. And you guys have some lovely people that really care about the community. And I was really pleasantly surprised just to have conversation with everyone up here. So thank you to all of you for just putting your name in the hat and doing this, because it's not easy, it's a lot. And so thanks. I was on the House Committee for Early Childhood and Human Services this past session, as well as Vice Chair of Business and Labor. I served on the Committee for Economic Development and Small Business, and also for Higher Education. So definitely had the chance to work on some issues in Early Childhood and Human Services that touched on concepts that I think we'll be speaking about tonight. As a business owner in my private life outside of the legislature, we own businesses on 3rd Street, and I was part of a task force with Chief Scales in addressing the mental crisis we have downtown. So I am excited for tonight and to hear all of the thoughts and questions and explore the conversation as we move forward. Thanks.
This cool.
Hello, I'm Lisa Poole, and I'm thrilled to be here. This is actually a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I am a working class single parent, and my child is at YC school, and so I get to hear all the time about the different issues that are showing up in the school systems, as well as I am a small business owner here. My small business is also on 3rd Street, and we get a front row view onto a lot of the issues that are happening in McMinnville, but McMinnville is not the only place these issues are showing up. But as a acupuncturist, as a healthcare provider, I get to hear every day, all day, about what's really going on for folks and the struggles that people are dealing with. And so because of that, I've been a lifelong healthcare advocate. And so in the middle of the pandemic, I sat on the Oregon Essential Health Benefits Committee and expanded access for non-opiate related therapies. This is very important to me. because a lot of the issues that we have here could be addressed by preventative measures and get folks before it blossoms into a huge issue. But more than that, what I get to hear about every single day is just lack of access. There's just not the facilities that we need. There's insurance barriers. There's a lack of providers that we have as a nation, but also specifically in rural counties. And we need to bring in more technology and more other aspects that can really enhance the capabilities of our small communities to get the care that it needs. So I'm really thankful as well for everybody sitting up here. It truly is great to see you all here as well. This shows your commitment and your care to this community that I share. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight. So thank you.
The first of our questions, you'll have 2 minutes to respond to, and first person will be the Ms. Berschauer. Given the recent reversal of the Supreme Court of the Ninth Circuit Court ruling regarding homelessness, what can you do? What should our government do to support vulnerable members of our community, many of whom experience mental health and/or addiction issues?
Thank you. So Yamhill County has been a strong partner, especially with the Housing Authority of Yamhill County, a group that has done a lot for providing housing specifically for people who are suffering from mental illness, but also wrapping around treatment in that first phase and ultimately getting them into more permanent housing. I think the last time I checked, we had a 4-year wait list for affordable housing units for this particular clientele population. So we have partnered and invested in the Sheridan Housing Project. We have partnered in McMinnville with Stratus Village and those 175 units that are now coming online. We have dedicated units that the county has set aside specifically for our clients that suffer from behavioral health needs. We work with our Veteran Services group to make sure that our veterans have housing covered, as well as those wraparound supports. In the past 4 years, we've had a lot of ARPA money coming in. ARPA money is federal money that came from COVID, so we really have tried to focus those dollars into highest needs communities. We had a package called the Focus on Families package, and a lot of that money was sent to First Baptist Church in McMinnville or CWC in Newburgh to try and help not just the transient population, but also the clientele that does disproportionately suffer from mental illness and addiction. So we've been strong partners. We have fantastic organizations in the county, and we will continue to partner going forward.
Mr. King? Same question? Same questions. Would you like me to read it again?
Sure.
Easier said than done. Given the recent reversal by the Supreme Court of the Ninth Circuit Court ruling regarding homelessness, in Southern Oregon, I think it was, what can you do, and what should our government do to support vulnerable members of our community, many of whom experience mental health and/or addiction issues?
Yeah, I remember this was grants past, right?
Yep.
I think that the vets that we have been great. I know that the commissioners now have really helped some of those communities with transition beds and or in transitional housing and helping that. But what I would like to see is a step further into kind of the preventative pieces of it, like detox centers and recovery high schools that we and talked about, but or maybe in the works. But I would like to really start to bring those things home for us and find the resources that are available to us with some of these people that are right here at the table, with those relationships to help us get those monies to be able to bring here. So I think that the county is doing a great job right now, as good a job as they can with those transitional beds and transitional housing. But really, I think doesn't do good enough unless we have the detox piece of that. So that would be something that I would want to work on very quickly, very as soon as possible.
Miss Elmer.
Thank you. It's okay if I stand, yeah? Okay. I feel like I need to see my parents, and they're all at my club, so I don't know what that. So, yes, I agree with the commissioner and opponent over here. I also, from a state level, we can appropriate funds back to the county and trust that the county is going to get those funds where they need to go. But we also, I want to do things that are going to maybe go the distance. And while putting the Band-Aid on it is very important, and I'm not minimizing it at all, I also want to look at things we can do that will effectively produce long-term change and help heal our community. One of those things is we do need access to more beds. You're absolutely right. And so I read a bill during the long session and the short session that would repeal the certificate of need certificate or requirement. The certificate of need in the state of Oregon is it's a regulatory requirement that any hospital or facility that's coming in to build a new center or anything that's going to offer a service has to have this. But it's not a measure of standard. It is just something that they have to apply for and spend money on and do all of the paperwork. And then the Oregon Health Authority, OHA, will say whether or not that's needed. So they're basically looking at is the area already flooded with whatever service that this new entity is wanting to bring forth. But it is a barrier, and I'm a huge proponent of private-public relationships, and so we have private sometimes that wants to come in, and they can really help in this area. We've seen that in the state of Oregon, and they've lost faith in because the certificate of need process is so lengthy and so expensive. So I am working to bring the bill back this next session in two forms. I'm excited to try to do something that will alleviate a barrier so that we can absolutely get more beds, which we desperately need.
Ms. Poole?
Yes, I think the biggest issue, just to kind of tackle on to what everybody else has already said, is that we just don't have enough of the long term. We have been tossing fixes here and there and having short-term programs. This is what I've been hearing a lot as I've been going around and talking to different leaders, is that we keep funding like a year-long program. But a year is really actually short-term. So one of the problems that we have, not only in the state of Oregon, but in this country a little bit, is that short-term. We really want solutions right now, but the solutions that were for today should have started 20 years ago. So we have a kind of a double-sided problem. We have the issue of the problems that are with us right now, but we also need to be laying that framework for where we're going to be next year, where we're going to be in 10 years, and where we're going to be in 20 years. And I feel that because we have not laid down that framework, that's why we're suffering so much right now, and that's why so many Oregonians are frustrated, right? You're frustrated because we see people who are asking for help and then they can't get it. So we really need to look at the funding. We need to look at the planning. We need those short-term, but we need long-term. Part of what I do as an acupuncturist is I think about the branch and the root of a problem. And the branch means, okay, well, today, your hip is really hurting, so let me give you some treatment. But what if it turns out your hip pain is from something that also needs surgery? So the branch is that I can give you a little relief with acupuncture, but ultimately what we really need is a surgery to fix the problem. And so this is where I feel like my experience will come in handy, is that we're going to look for those branch treatments to get some additional care going right now, but we also need to be laying that foundation for understanding why we're in the place that we are now and set the stage for where we're going to be in 10 to 20 years.
Ms. Salinas?
So I think, like some of the folks up here, I like to think of this in kind of broader strokes. There are three areas that we as Oregonians are really suffering with right now. One of them is workforce. We don't have enough folks to provide the care that is needed. One of them, obviously, and I think folks up here who I've also spoken with, infrastructure is clearly a need. And then we also need to direct some of the solutions to payers, right? So who is paying the bill? And whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance. We need to make sure that it's on par with physical health experiences too. So when a patient needs it, they're all on par. But going back to the services and people who actually provide health care and mental health care, we need more peer support services. So thinking about peer navigators, which I know some of the counties are starting to work on right now. But we need to be able to pay them, right? And they need to be able to come into the workforce. We need something. So I actually have a bill on that has the Department of HHS to look at what are some of the barriers to getting additional peer support specialists on panels, and how are we paying them? And then we also need to look at folks who want to go into mental health and social work. Right now, we know a 4-year degree could put somebody in the range of anywhere between $60,000 to like $120,000 in debt just for a 4-year degree, wanting, a mental health degree when they graduate. So providing scholarships. I just came out with a bill around that with a colleague from New York who's a Republican colleague. All my bills are bipartisan. And then the last piece is, again, making sure that Medicare and Medicaid both offer mental health services. And we can do a lot here at the state level, but we could, especially with our coordinated care organizations, but we can also do a lot at the federal level as well. And right now we know I've heard a lot on the campaign trail, especially from folks who are on Medicare, that they don't get the mental health services. And so providing those services and making that a benefit would be incredibly helpful. And then again, holding private payers' feet to the fire and making sure it's on par with physical health.
Mr. Elliott? Well, I think both the original Boise ruling and the Grants Pass decision that overturned that were really just directed at the visible symptom that everybody saw, which was the camping in public. And that's really what it addresses, is people that are out there in the community that you're seeing that are living on the sidewalks or in RVs or in the parks. It doesn't address the mental health component or the addiction component. And so whether or not those ordinances are enacted or enforced to deal with the symptom of the public camping, that's not addressing the root of the problem, which is the addiction and the mental health crisis. We have a very robust community outreach support program here in the county through our HHS. And the law enforcement that are out there on the street that are encountering these people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, are trying to connect those crisis outreach and community support individuals with the folks that are out on the street to try to get them brought in and to try to encourage them to engage and to get those services. I am proud of the deputies that work for me and the steps that they take just as individuals. We have deputies that collect blankets and warm clothing in preparation for the bad weather. They drive around with that stuff in their car. And even if they can't get them to engage with one of the community outreach individuals that particular day, they make a connection with them. They give them a granola bar, they give them a bottle of water and a blanket, and they're able to make a personal connection, and maybe tomorrow they are willing to engage. And so we try to utilize those services that we do have through the county to try to get them at least some help.
Thank you all for those conversations. In the same vein as the last question on homelessness, vulnerable community members suffering from mental illnesses often find themselves drawn hopelessly into the criminal justice system with fines, incarcerations, and convictions that further complicate their ability to function and recover. What can you do, or what revision should we make in the system to benefit these people who are afflicted with mental illnesses? Ms. Elmer?
Thank you. So we did work very hard during short session to pass House Bill 4002, which addressed Measure 110, because Oregon was in a crisis. And, we see it here in McMinnville, but it's all over our state. And obviously Portland was in the news a lot, and we couldn't look the other way, nor did we want to. So we worked hard to try to put some tools back into the hands of our law enforcement while working together as a legislative body, listening to all parts of the conversation. So, we do have a process now that is a start. I think we have a long ways to go, but it is a start. So we have deflection, and we have Measure 4000 or House Bill 4002 has put into place sort of a roadmap so that we can actually get people and take them to in front of the courts if that's where they need to go, but also knowing that an addict, that isn't the best place, or someone that's suffering from mental health, obviously that's not the best place, so that we have other options for them. So very important, and I think it's a really good start. We do need to bolster that up in all areas. We need help on the criminal justice side, and we need help in the behavioral health and mental health facility side. So I think that we still have a ways to go, but I love that at least we have started that journey and that we are able to get people the help they need, because we sincerely do want to help these people, and being on the street and suffering is not any place for anyone.
Ms. Poole?
This is a really complicated problem, right? And so one of the things we recognize is that it's all connected. Every aspect is connected. So the housing is connected to the addiction, which is connected to the mental health. It's all connected. And so it's really important as we are addressing this issue that we're understanding this connection between all of these elements. Because one of the primary issues that people are having, for example, with pain, if you can't regulate your pain, and you don't have access to regulate it, then sometimes people will turn to drugs to help them cope with the pain. And then if it's not regulated, then it turns into addiction, and then it just keeps going, and then people lose their job or they lose their housing. And then when you don't have an address, you can't get some of the services that you need. You can't get a job. It's all connected. And so I think one of the problems that we're having is we're compartmentalizing just a little bit too much. We really need to start looking at how all of these things intersect and how important stable housing is to addiction and addressing it, as well as looking at how it has such a greater impact on the quality of life. We talk about just keeping people alive, but are we talking about how they're living? How are they being in this world? I want my neighbor to feel supported in their process and whatever is going on for them, if they need help, that they can get to it. So if we want people to make changes, we have to look at all of those components and how they are fitting together and how they're working together, or in this case, maybe how they're not. And so there's some missing factors that I think we need to bring to the table, and starting with looking at all those pieces and their interconnection and addressing them not just as a one-by-one, but as a system. And I think when we start doing that, we can also address the fact that a person is a whole person. And we want to treat people with dignity. We also want to make sure that we're having a system that isn't just punishing people, but actually we're looking at a system where we are allowing people to make changes and giving them the structure for the long haul to make those changes to be successful. Because I don't want to keep doing this. I don't know about you guys, but it's time for change.
Ms. Salinas?
So going back to the need for additional resources, I am really excited to see what HB 4002 can do. And I just finished up actually a listening tour with all of my county commissioners and folks on the ground who will be implementing this. So thank you to all who have given me the time to learn a little bit more. And what I continue to hear is, while the deflection program I think can work here in Oregon, we still don't have the actual infrastructure. So to some of the points that have already been made, we need the detox centers, the peer respite centers, some type of transitional housing, a place for people to go who want to get out of the cycle of incarceration and addiction and ending up back on the street. So, but we don't have the infrastructure still. And that's where I actually think the federal government can come in and play a role in this. So I'm actually pulling together a number of different pieces, thanks to the conversations I've had with many of the folks up here, to figure out what that looks like. And we know that there are some things where right now, if we build different types of severe and persistent mental illness centers, there's a threshold of, I think it's 36 or 38 units. You can't put any more than that in one type of center. And to the point of, the point of economies of scale, what it costs folks and developers, it might be a little bit more attractive to make something a little bit larger. So looking at some of those policies that are really preventing us from getting there. But I do think the federal government has a big role to play. The state's not going to be able to meet the demand that we have right now. And we really do, as folks have said, want to keep these people in a safe place and get them on the road to recovery if that is what they choose. I will also say that we've actually had a pretty successful program, Project Turnkey, where during COVID, many hotels and motels were not being used. And across Oregon, we've been able to turn those into transitional housing. And Congresswoman Bonamici from Congressional District 1, she actually brought a bill forward that could do something similar to that nationwide. And so I'm on the bill. I think it's getting a lot of traction in Commerce. So I would love to see something like that take hold. And I think we could get more resources here. So that would be my plan. Thank you.
Mr. Elliott?
Was I mentioned before that I attended the CIT course in 2019? A part of that is really getting our staff to recognize what is the appropriate resolution just in that moment. And I think we're doing a much better job of recognizing that individuals who have engaged in behavior that does meet the statute for a particular criminal offense, they may not be doing that behavior because they're choosing to do that, or that it's more a result of the condition that they're in the moment. And so rather than just bringing those people to jail, we are encouraging the engagement with our community outreach, or just taking them to the hospital instead. We do have the ability to make those judgment calls, and it's fairly evident when you're in the middle of dealing with some of these individuals. There is a sliding scale. Is jail better than on the street? In some cases it is, but jail is not a rehabilitative place, and they need intensive medical treatment, and they are in the midst of dealing with something that is very impactful, both to them but also to their network of support. And so making those judgment calls that we're going to just keep driving right on past the exit to come into town and go out to the hospital and try to get them engaged with providers that are going to be able to get past some of the barriers that we struggle with in law enforcement when it comes to getting people appropriate placement and treatment for their mental health conditions. We do also have staff now in the jail every single day that are meeting with individuals and trying to help with the symptoms that they have, and also dealing with some wraparound and placement when they are getting released to try to break that cycle.
Ms. Berschauer?
So I think that we all know that untreated mental illness and addiction lead to criminality. We've known that for a long time. And I have to say that we see the other 35 counties in the state, and Yamhill County is blessed. We've been blessed with strong leadership in the past, from everyone from our courts, our judges, to our DA's office, to Health and Human Services. Folks that understood that we have to do a better job than just incarcerating people. We have to actually look at restorative justice. And so we have the oldest adult drug court in the state. We also have juvenile drug court to try and keep people out of incarceration, actually treat the problem. I think one of the saddest things that I've seen is that through Measure 110, we had folks suffering from mental illness that were being sent to the state hospital to make sure that they could aid and assist in their own defense, and they were being kicked out of the state hospital too soon. They weren't completing treatment because of lack of funding or whatever the excuse was, and so they were being sent back to the county or just being dropped off on the streets of Salem in Marion County, and there's nobody there to help them. That's one of the saddest things that I've seen. So we are continuing that strong leadership. I've been the county lead along with the sheriff, along with our DA, our HHS director, Lindsay, and all of us have come together to try to figure out how to implement House Bill 4002, our deflection program, and implement it immediately, right on September 1st when the law changed. We are one of 10 counties in the entire state that are actually doing this. And we are trying to change the way that we deal with some of these issues. We are trying to integrate our Health and Human Services, our behavioral health department, with our law enforcement teams so that we can respond to these issues right away before it leads to someone becoming incarcerated that is suffering from addiction and mental illness.
Mr. King?
Gee. Like most people, I wasn't a huge fan of 110 and still learning about 4002. I haven't had a chance to be at the table with the implementation of this, but I do applaud the fact that we do have at least a plan. I agree with the sheriff that arresting your way through this is not really a great plan, and just passing the buck into a different department. I plan on trying to support HHS as best as I can, and working within those guidelines and again with Elmer, that private public-private partnership, I think we do have people in this county and organizations, most of you probably even work for them, that feel called to do this work, right? And you can a lot of times do it a bit more efficiently. And so I want to work with some of the people at this table again to find those resources, to build those programs, to really build that healthy community, right? Because when we have the folks in our town, right, that are suffering from these addictions and from these mental health episodes in their homes or in some of our busiest business areas, doesn't create a healthy environment, right, for our community. And so the rest of the community suffers. So that's what I really want to do. I want to help support the best that I can and find those resources.
If you wonder what the core interest of NAMI is, these questions will lead you there, and when I read the next one, you will understand. We're trying to triangulate a strategy that would most effectively benefit folks who are dear and dear to us. The intent, I believe, of Measure 110 was treatment first, but the passage of HB 4002 restores criminal penalties for drug possession. HB 4002 continues the emphasis on diversion and deflection, but requires law enforcement and health officials to track the success of these programs. What can you do to support members of our community who experience addiction issues, many of whom are also experiencing mental health issues, to assure success of the diversion programs? Mr. Elliott.
Well, as the commissioner mentioned, we are only one of 10 counties that have our deflection program up and running. We were up and running on September 1st when it became a crime, once again, to possess controlled substances in Oregon. Really, it begins with that initial contact. When law enforcement engages with somebody out on the street for a variety of reasons, we wanted to make sure that whatever program we put in place worked for law enforcement in the county. We are not Portland or any of the other places that you'll hear about. We have a very, very low ratio of law enforcement to citizens in the state of Oregon and in Yamhill County. We don't have the time to be doing warm handoffs where we're driving people, at least for us, from, say, Sheridan into McMinnville in that moment. And so we've built a system where we allow time for people to engage. We took the lead in that grant application at the sheriff's office, and we were able to hire somebody just for the purpose of tracking and keeping stats on how successful we are being. We're having ongoing discussions as we work through this process to define what success is and how we're being effective in some meaningful change. So those individuals that we encounter, unless they have some other issue going on in the criminal arena or a warrant or something, they're not going to jail. They're getting a citation to appear with an info card on where they need to go, by what date, to check in and get an assessment and to start that process. The criminal charge does hopefully incentivize them to go do that, because if they engage with deflection, then it comes out of the criminal arena. And so just encouraging folks to follow through and go check in at HHS and get that assessment, it will be the first step.
Ms. Salinas?
So again, in talking with the different counties, I also recognize that the rollback of Measure 110 and HB 4002 does give law enforcement some additional tools. I think, what I've been saying is we also need to make sure that there isn't this proliferation of fentanyl and opioids and drugs that we are seeing on our street. And one thing that I learned from talking to folks, and thank you to the sheriff, is that Oregon works pretty closely with federal agents through the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Agency, and we have lost some of those resources recently, and so they pointed that out That would be something that would be really helpful because they actually monitor what's happening up and down I-5 from the Mexico border all the way up to Canada. We should also be looking at some of the precursor materials that are used to make fentanyl down in Mexico and what China sends over, and some of our trade laws around that, and to really monitor what is happening. So that prevention piece and working with local law enforcement on that. And then in addition, that care piece, those pieces that I know law enforcement wants. So like they had said to me, we don't have detox centers. We don't have peer, and not necessarily Yamhill County. I'm talking about all 5 of my counties. I got different little pieces from each of them because every county gets to do it differently. So I also want to make sure that there is coordination and enough resources to go around. I don't want this to be a battle between different counties on what they're getting, what someone else isn't getting. So if there's an overlay where the federal government can come in and say, let's help the entire state with this. And I think there is a healthcare aspect to this where HHS could be a payer on some of these things. So looking at what we call our Medicaid and Medicare waivers to help pay for some of these centers, because I do think this is a public health issue. So giving it that nexus, I think, would be incredibly helpful as well.
Ms. Berschauer? Vote for Yamhill.
Thank you. So the question was about accountability, tracking, making sure that we have measurable success. That's been a core part of our conversation that we've been having with the group that is implementing deflection in Yamhill County. And the group consists of, as I talked about, the DA's office, HHS Director Lindsay Manfred, the sheriff, and several of his folks. We have every single police chief in the city, in the county there as well around the table. This is something that we have all hands on deck for, to try and make sure that we can be successful. We have our judges, the chief judges there as well. We don't want to fail with this. And what we're finding is that the preliminary stats are showing that the core problem seems to be in the city of McMinnville. But beyond that, we're dealing with a transient population. This is a population that is really hard to get a hold of. They don't have a home. They don't have a stable home. They don't have a cell phone necessarily. And so how do you reach those people and pull them into the deflection program and get them in front of our HHS Department or Behavioral Health Department? So that's a big component of accountability and success. And we're in constant talks with the state to try and make sure that they understand that we need these metrics if we're going to continue to get funding. When we met with Rep. Salinas a couple months ago, we made sure to communicate that we don't necessarily have a staffing problem. We have folks that want to do this work. We are bottlenecking at the detox facility and the residential treatment beds. So we are pushing really hard for that. We are also pushing, as the sheriff is, to tackle fentanyl on a federal level. This is a problem across the entire nation, and it's impacting this county here. If you don't see it, it's there, I promise you, and it's hurting our kids, and it's killing folks, and we need to do something about it.
Mr. King?
So, again, still making myself familiar with this, but if the plan works, we need to be able to have resources for HHS. And with our new budget that we have, that's not really going to be possible. So I intend to really try to find those resources. And I know that our caseload workers at HHS are overstaffed by about 25%, more than the average for Oregon. 24%, I think. So I see that being a huge problem in this, that if this is going to work, then HHS really carries the load. And what I don't see is that all of the sheriffs and law enforcement people and judges, but I don't see much more than Director Lindsay Manfred at the table to represent that healthcare side of things. How are we going to get a detox center? What is a detox center going to do? How long is it? Answer these questions, right? That's where I see the problem that we're going to butt up against. And then when we run out of those resources, we'll start arresting. And because those where the resources are at. So that's what I want to see happen. I want to go support Lindsay Manfred in those goals and try to build that department back whole.
Lucetta?
Thank you. So, yes and yes. Another part of this would be what I already talked about, and that is the beds. So, in my position, what can I do? I can bring forth policy that would help private-public partnerships. I really believe that we need private business to help. We always need private business at the table. This should land on the shoulders of just the government. So having private businesses come in and be able to build facilities that will give us more beds, reducing regulatory barriers that are in place, such as the certificate of need, those are great ideas and things that I am working on. I also think that another area that we've talked about and things I can do at the state level is work on increasing the workforce, because we see a shortage of workforce and being able to provide for these patients once they do have beds. We did increase some funding and streamline some money to colleges that would help them implement more programs in this industry. I know George Fox and Chemeketa both now have programs that they didn't have before, so they're hopefully trying to increase workforce there. That is very helpful. And then just to touch on, I know there was a bipartisan work group during the interim that was looking at addressing how our current nonprofits are being accountable with the tax dollars that they're receiving, since they're a nonprofit and that accountability isn't the same as if they were a government agency. I think that's one way that we can, maybe we're not tracking results, but it could lead to that, but tracking the tax dollars and seeing exactly how the money is getting spent. So hopefully that we are going in the right direction. Thanks.
Ms. Poole.
So again, going back to what I said before, how it's all interconnected, when we are not spending the money of what we need to, which is getting people the health care when they need it, we are then just pushing the problem down the chain. And I do feel like our law enforcement are being put in a predicament to have to address a lot of mental health issues. That is not really what they're there for. And so I feel like one of the things that we need to do to be accountable is to look at not only what we're doing in this moment, help people build a sobering center, but we also need, like, what is sober living looking like? Can we give somebody a year of success that is really building towards long-term turning this around? Because if we don't, 30 days is just not enough to turn around addiction. It's just not. And this addiction is not just a rational choice about doing something different for your life. You need a support system. And some people have support system. That's great. I'm lucky I have my family here in town, and I know if I fell, they'd catch me. But there's a lot of people who don't have that. Sometimes family is part of the problem. So what are we doing in terms of taking resources and using that for the long haul? And so I think part of what we have to do when we look at our budgets is that if we are able to tackle the problem towards the beginning, we are saving ourselves a lot of pain and a lot of financial pain, a lot of social pain, a lot of community pain by addressing it at the beginning instead of waiting for it to balloon into a problem. We see this all the time in healthcare, right? You just sit on it and you do nothing. It's just going to continue to blossom and grow. But if we can catch the problem at the early, there's a lot of conditions that we can address and change for the better and help you live a much longer life. That analogy can be applicable here as well, where we're really looking at how what we're doing right now can save us money by addressing it as soon as we identify a problem. And addiction is not just a problem of the homeless either. So I think we have not talked about that enough yet this evening.
Thank you. Parity is the basic idea that mental health conditions and substance abuse disorders should be covered and treated to the same level as physical conditions. Several weeks ago, the federal government announced new final rules aimed at aimed at improving access in its programs to mental health and substance use treatment with those of more overt physical conditions. That is, parity. Given the current budget constraints in HHS budget of Yamhill County and other Oregon counties throughout the state, what steps do you think we should take to increase and enhance the treatment of everyone that is with mental health conditions as well as of more overt physical conditions in our health care programs? that is parity between mental health and physical ailments. Ms. Salinas.
Thank you for this question. So I actually served as the first chair of the Behavioral Health Committee that was stood up in 2020. And we talked a lot about this. And we actually got a bill passed in Oregon that was supposed to basically reinforce what we're supposed to be doing in the federal government, which is to treat mental and addiction illness the same as we do physical illness. But it wasn't happening. And a lot of it was with private payers. That is supposed to be happening now, but we do need funds to make sure that things get enforced. And so that does take the role of government to make sure that, insurance companies are doing it. Another piece, though, and this also goes to the state level, and then I'll get to the federal level, is that our CCOs really should be making sure that those who, are under Medicaid have the resources that they need. That was the whole idea around establishing our coordinated care organizations, is that it would look at the whole person, and that includes mental illness as well as substance use and addiction. From the federal level, I would say the same thing. So our under HHS, our addiction and recovery agency isn't even a fully funded agency. And I find that really disheartening. And so I actually, one of my first bills to look at peer support services was, first of all, to establish full-time, a complete agency under HHS on addiction and recovery. And then for them to go and figure out what are some of the barriers around peer support services that we could move forward in a serious way. But I think actually elevating some of these issues, and that has been my goal as the incoming co-chair of the Mental Health Caucus, is to make sure that we are talking about this constantly. And I have what I call my Mental Health Mondays, where I go to the House floor if I'm in Washington, D.C., and I talk about whatever the issue of the day might be, whether it's to destigmatize the issue, to just make it a little bit more socialized, that we can all talk about it. We all have friends or family members or someone we know who are suffering right now, and it's ravaging our communities. So I would love for all of us, and I think that's why we're all here today, is to have these conversations in a more socialized way.
Ms. Berschauer.
Thank you. So we do have walk-in care at our HHS facility Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You can walk in and you receive drug and alcohol assessments. You can receive wraparound supports. It's there. We have a gap after hours, and we have a gap on the weekend. And so part of this conversation about House Bill 4002 and how we're going to manage deflection and how we best pair those individuals with care is ongoing. And we have a gap that we are looking to fill there. Today, the Board of Commissioners just approved a almost $5 million in grant applications for burn funding. Burn funding is Measure 110 funding. It was meant to go towards recovery addiction services. It was meant to go towards helping boost behavioral health programs, and also to talk about a detox residential treatment bed facility. So again, we keep coming back to that. It truly is the bottleneck. I think Rep. Salinas might remember this in our meeting, but we had some pretty frank conversations about that and how our Health and Human Services Department, our Behavioral Health Department, we have the people there. They're ready. They want to serve this population. We're missing a key piece of infrastructure. Now, the Board of Commissioners has talked about how to use our opioid settlement dollars. That's one-time funds. They're coming in sporadically from lawsuits that have been settled over opioid abuse. And so far we have about $1.5 million sitting in that pot. We have committed to not just frittering it away on growing the size of government or staffing here and there. We actually want to use that on a facility. So we're looking for partners to take the bulk of that funding, maybe with a state or federal assistance, a grant, to actually make this detox facility come to life and make it happen here.
Mr. King.
I think that, I pay a lot of money in insurance, so I would love it if I had addiction problems, if that got addressed, right? Addressing the whole body, the whole problem, I think would be great. The way that I understand HHS right now, though, to follow up on what Berschauer had to say, is that the way that I understand it is that we don't see people every day unless they're in a serious problem, that they are suicidal right now, is the way that I understand this, and I'm happy to be wrong. But, and that's the problem in the survey that was done in the assessment, that essentially, if this room has 100 people in it, the first 4 rows here wouldn't have access that day, and they might not have even gotten access at all. So I see that as being a huge problem. And so, yeah, I think that we need to address the whole body and make that HHS whole to be able to lighten that workload of our providers that we have there and to do the work. And if insurance can step in, if our friends at the federal level can help with that, then I think that that's great. And make insurance, then we don't have to find as much resources to do this work. So, thank you.
How are you in state programs, Mrs. Elmer?
Thank you. As you can tell, this is a complex conversation. There's so many different angles, and I can't pretend to have the answer. What I can do is listen and elevate the conversation, be engaged when opportunities arise. There's great minds. There's great minds up here. I'm sure there's great minds in the audience. There's great minds at the federal level. There's great minds in Salem. And we look at this from all different angles. So it is complex, and you make a move here, and that's going to affect the rest of the chain. I'm a supporter of the CCOs. I appreciate what they do, and I like the model. From my position, I can vote to continue to fund, and then once that's done, it goes to the county level, and then they do their magic. But I think that's a piece. I think that it's a piece to talk about the insurance aspect, but that is a whole nother day's topic. So again, from my standpoint as your state representative, I am always engaged in these conversations. I want to understand them. I want to look at it from all angles. I want to talk to the people I don't agree with to understand why I don't agree and see if maybe we can find a path forward together. And I'll continue to do that. Thanks.
Ms. Poole?
Mental health care is health care. We'll just end of story, right? Whether it's your hearing, or your dental, your mind, it's on your body. And one of the things I see every day is how much that stress and strain that people are going through affects their physicality, but also the physicality affecting the mind. And we have to start that conversation from that place and move forward from there. And I think we need to stop compartmentalizing healthcare because it doesn't serve us in the long run. And so if we can really take a look at the accountability piece, what I want to see is, again, going back to that longevity, I want to see investments in our community. I want to see investments in the people. And that looks like, again, what are we doing in a year from now with this person? So success and accountability was that person from today and a year from today, where are they at? And I want to see that trackability. And I don't think that we're going to measure out so great when we do that. Because if we look for maybe 30 days, maybe somebody in a detox center did great for 30 days. But when they get out of there, when they get out of the detox center 30 days later, if there's no support system to catch them, they're going to be right back in it. So for me, accountability comes from really understanding that this is all the same problem. There's nothing different here. And so we have to look at how we're going to take the money that we have, invest it more wisely, and then look for long-term funding. And I think that does require federal money. It has to come in. It has to be a state, county, all hands on deck, and really move that needle forward. I see every day in my clinic that our Health and Human Services is not fully funded. People cannot get services. It is a huge problem. We need a lot more funding. We need a lot more attention on this issue, and people are struggling to get the care that they need. And that's from the private sector as well as the CCO. And I do have about 50% of my patients are on Oregon Health Plan. So I do see every day the truth of we need more resources.
Mr. Elliott?
I'm going to try to talk fast because I got like 3 things on this. I'm really excited. First of all, Yamhill County is one of 3 counties in the state right now that's engaged in a pilot project together with Jackson County and Clackamas County, where we are going to be enrolling individuals that are in the carceral setting or in the jail with Unite Us, which is a program that they can stand up their own account. It gives them referrals to providers that they are eligible for, and it's something that they can continue to access even after they are released from custody. So we are getting very close to deploying Unite Us within the Yamhill County Jail, that we will be able to get folks enrolled so that when they are released, they have references and resources that they have already been referred to based off of their individual eligibility. Number 2 is we are going to be submitting for a grant by the 13th of this month to the Criminal Justice Commission to stand up medication-assisted treatment in the jail. This is a huge part of starting to interrupt that cycle and getting people stabilized and to a healthy place so that when they are released from custody, they're able to continue that care in the community. And this is something that HHS Director Manfred has been right there meeting with me and helping me with navigating this process. We are hoping to utilize our medical provider in the jail, but she has told me if they're not able to do it, we will come do it. The third thing is that we're really excited about the prospect of the 1115 waiver, which will allow people that are in custody to still have access to their Medicare and Medicaid to receive treatment, whether that's physical ailments, mental health conditions, to have the access to their insurance when they're in custody. And that should be starting in January. We're hopeful that that is going to be something that comes about because it will vastly improve our ability to engage those services in the carceral setting.
The federal designation of 988 as the new 3-digit number for mental health, substance abuse, and suicide crises was possible because of a bipartisan congressional support for mental health. However, not all areas of the country can provide adequate services, and there may indeed be too few people to actually answer the phones. How familiar are you with the 988 system, and how will you or how should we encourage its implementation and enhance its capacity? Ms. Berschauer.
This is not the subject matter that I'm an expert in. I think Rep. Elmer could probably speak a little bit more clearly about that legislation. However, in terms of trying to solve the fact that somebody might not be answering the phone or the services might not be so robust, we have really poured a lot of time and effort and resources into building our COS teams, our crisis response teams, and we have even taken those to the level of our YCOM meetings. So when the sheriff and I meet with the YCOM director, which is our 911 dispatcher, that we are integrating the COS teams in a way that doesn't prevent law enforcement from showing up to calls, but how can we best partner with our COS teams to make sure that they get the information as quickly as possible so that you have 24/7 coverage for our COS teams. So if someone is having a mental crisis or a mental breakdown, there is someone from the county who is available to come. The challenge has been, how do you integrate that into a law enforcement system and a 911 system so that you still serve the public in a way that they expect? When you dial 911, you expect law enforcement to show up. However, if it's a particular situation, we also want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those individuals that are perhaps having mental health breaks. And so our response, not just 988, but our response has been to invest in and build those teams so that we are capable of having 24/7 coverage. And I think we've utilized those quite a bit in the county. So we're very thankful to have that.
Mr. King.
Never spoken about this, so thoughts may come to mind as I'm speaking. But I think that, like Commissioner said, that we need to really be building every part of this, and including 988. But we live in a rural county. I know that the suicide rate for farmers is 3 times somebody that lives in the city, or 3 times higher than the national average, really. So that's a big problem for us who live out here. In fact, I had a neighbor just last year commit suicide. So I want to be an advocate for this. I think anybody on at this table would always say yes to funding, to more resources, to more health. This is a huge mental health problem that we have, and one that affects our community, probably every person in this room.
Mr. Elliott.
I will tell you that I don't know how 988 works behind the scenes. I can tell you that if they get information that they believe that there's an imminent danger to somebody who has contacted 988, they're calling us. And so, as Commissioner Berschauer mentioned, the COS teams that we partner with here in Yamhill County, they are available 24/7. They are staffed on 12-hour shifts. Even if there's not somebody actually available at the moment, they're always on call, and they come out all hours of the day and night to support law enforcement. They're engaged with individuals in the community. 988 in concept is great, that it's a simple way for people to know where to go to get help. It's an easy number to remember, just like 911, that in the midst of a crisis, that's where they can go, and they don't have to try to figure out, there's a lot of anxiety about calling 911. People think that means that there's going to be a whole chain of events that happen. There seems to be a lot of reluctance to call 911. So if people are willing to call 988 and explain the situation that they're in, they obviously are going to be reaching out, because they're not housed in every individual county. If it's something that's imminent and in crisis, they are going to reach out to somebody that's in the area. And so continuing to build out those depth of resources here, because not every crisis is a law enforcement issue. We certainly want to be there to help support, but if there's ways that we can improve getting the individuals to the scene to help those individuals and not add the additional stress of somebody in the uniform that brings certain connotations, that's better for them, and we are fully in support of that.
Ms. Elmer.
Thank you. So 988 was a bill that was passed in our state as well, and the purpose was to have, like was mentioned, an easy number to remember for mental crisis, the suicide line. And it had bipartisan support. I think everyone in the building very much saw the need for this, and of course, we want to support that, and we did support that. There was question. There was a lot of no votes on that bill, and the question was not the authenticity of the bill or the nature of what it was for, but it was around the fiscal responsibility of that bill. It added a 40-cent tax to all phone lines per month. So that there was a question there, but the purpose of it is very needed, and we saw that coming out of COVID, especially with our youth. There was another bill that I supported along the same lines as this one, and that gave money to OSU to train providers to train people to address mental illness in rural communities, because the time to get there is much harder. And so if we had more people trained and could get assistance right there, that would obviously be better. But the concept behind 988, obviously, to assist with suicidal thoughts and to help alleviate our hospitals, to help alleviate law enforcement, so that maybe we have another line of another barrier there, another resource for people to tap into.
Ms. Polk.
I don't think there's anybody up here who would disagree with a method, to help people get to the care that they need as quickly as possible. And I do think it is important to recognize that there is a difference between a 911 call and a 988 call. Somebody can be having a mental health crisis that doesn't necessarily need law enforcement. And so that would save resources in terms of potentially setting up someone else, like a mental health therapist who can do crisis. My concern, again, is I'm just going to keep going back to this, and I can't help it, but it's just what happens. Where's the support system for that person once they've made the phone call? Is there enough support to catch them? And that's where my concern comes. Because why are they calling in the first place? Are we having a discussion about cost of living? Are we having a discussion about student loan debts? Are we having a discussion about, just the hopelessness that people are having right now in society and on many of the areas that are causing a lot of stress? Mental health issues are in all aspects of society, including in our medical providers. There is a really high suicide rate in veterinarians. There's a really high suicide rate in emergency room physicians as well. This problem spans the whole thing. And so I think it's really important that we are taking a look at why are people making those phone calls in the first place? Are we addressing that? And then once they do make those phone calls, do we have the resources to catch them, not just in that night, but also in a month from now? And do we have the resources to really look at that long-term impact and making sure we're taking care of people?
This leads.
So there has been discussion at the federal level around the deficiencies in 988 and where the holes are. And as I see it, as I've been talking to different communities, rural has been brought up a few times here. We know that we don't have the same kind of access to care as, say, Portland does. And so as I was hearing about the rates of depression and mental health issues in rural communities, I realized that our farming, fishing, and forestry industries really are heavy hit with this. And again, it's not something that we frequently talk about. But telehealth and telehealth mental health medicine is a great way to kind of start to close that gap. So I brought a bill forward, and I partnered with one of my colleagues from Tennessee. She's a Republican who lives in a rural area, just like I do. And the two of us were like, why don't we set up a grant program to see if we can bring something forward that addresses farming, fishing, and forestry and those living in rural areas who may not have access. That also, though, means that we have to have that broadband, right, and the access to that broadband. So this has been an area that I've been working on, too, with different communities to make sure that I get community project funds so that we are all connected, because this feels more like a utility that you absolutely need. It's the same as like turning on your faucet, drinking water, or having heat in your home when it's winter and freezing cold outside. So I consider the ability to connect to the world, especially when it comes to your health and mental health, a critical component for this. And this is where I think the government can step in. This would be a pilot project, if you will, for a limited duration. But if it's successful and we can get, again, I think so many of these issues are nonpartisan issues, we could get something moving here. I think we could really be a great test ground for that.
Thank you. Candidates, take a sip of water, take a breath, and would like to turn next to the questions.
That's the audience.
The questions, we have the first two questions will be for every one of the members, every one of the candidates here. You all will have one question, 1 minute to answer the question. And I'll begin with the first one. I'll read it as written. The National Library of Medicine says that LGBT young adults are over 5 times more likely than their non-LGBTQ peers to have suicidal ideations and self-harm. What, as an elected official, will you do to bring the community resources needed to help save a generation of children? Are there grants or other financial backing available through the state, federal, or the state or federal government?
Actually,
Mr. Elliott?
As far as specific funding, I don't know. But I will tell you that we get a lot of calls to deal with a lot of people that come from as diverse a background as the individuals themselves. We are expected to provide the same professional level of service regardless of individual circumstances, beliefs, political affiliations, religious considerations. They're all just people, and we are there to provide the best service that we can. And certainly when we become aware of things that are relevant for the partners that we engage with to provide the necessary service, we try to provide that information as best we can, that they have the most complete information to be able to help that individual.
Chief.
Thank you, whoever asked the question. Great question. There, what I always try to do is elevate the coming together, because there's just no reason to continue to have this divide. Sheriff Elliott said it perfectly. We're all people and we all deserve love. So we need to continue to have conversations. We don't need to be divisive. We just need to move forward and accept everyone, love everyone. There should be the same amount of resources available for everyone. And we really need to come together and heal what has become such a huge divide.
School.
Well, representation matters. So as a member of that community and growing up around a lot of the issues that I see as a member of that community, it's really important to keep talking about it and recognize that there can be a lot of mental health issues around it, because there can be a lot of bullying. There can be a lot of ignorance that goes on in the school systems. And so I think it's really important that not only do we find resources to help folks, but it's, again, comes back to some mental health issues in terms of really wanting to make sure people feel supported and cared for, and that they're accepted for all that they are, regardless of whatever factors that might be true of them. If it's a race issue, if it's a gender issue, if it has to do with their sexuality, it really should not matter. We're just all people here trying to get through our day. So I think representation matters, but also making sure that we're talking about it and making sure we're being welcoming to everybody in the community.
Ms. Berschauer, resources for LGBTQ community.
So kind of maybe more on the practical side of what's going on. So we have contracts with almost every school district, every high school, to come in and use our team and the behavioral health folks that we have trained and get them into the school so that they can help with that. I think the days of having a school counselor and a school nurse are sort of over. That seems like a rarity these days. And so our teams are actually in the schools. I think along with the bullying and all of that comes a tendency to want to use drugs. And so we have focused and voted for boosting fentanyl education into our schools and creating a program that's actually designed for them so that we can tackle some of those issues. I think the school districts are also doing a great job. We've had kids in 2 different school districts, and I've noticed a really healthy investment into trying to tackle some of those issues, at least on the school district level as well.
Mr. Kane.
I don't think I can sit up here and talk about farmers' suicide rate without also, and say that we need more support for farmers without also addressing queer communities' need of higher suicide rates. So I think you have to address the problem where it's highest. I don't think you get to discount the other people just because it's highest, but I think, like Lisa said, there's representation that has to be happen. There has to be a conversation, and realize that this is a problem. And so I think that we can do a better job. Our schools can use more education in this, and we can be supportive of everyone, no matter what walk of life.
The science.
As belong to a queer 19-year-old, I would have loved when she was in school, if she had a school-based health center that provided mental health services as well. I think meeting kids where they are, when they need the assistance and the care is critical. And I visited Yamhill County's school-based health center, and it's amazing, and it can work, but we need more of them. And we need them not just statewide, but nationwide. So I am on a bill to do just that, to get the Department of Health, and I have a bill for everything, Health and Human Services, to make sure that we do basically produce school-based health centers nationwide, because we are at a crisis right now. And again, as a mom who experienced it with her daughter, I think it would have been tremendously helpful.
Thank you. This next question from the audience is also for all of you. How do you plan on helping domestic violence victims with immediate need for housing and programs while other programs are not yet implemented? Miss Elmer?
I know, I'm glad you're going for it. That's a hard.
I'm not sure that I completely understand what they're getting at. Can you read it one more time?
How do you plan on helping domestic violence victims with immediate needs for housing and other programs while other programs are not yet implemented?
Daniel. Nice.
I don't know what that means precisely, but
Well, I think it is important that we have safe places, and I know we do here in Yamhill County, for victims of domestic violence. And I have toured those right here in Yamhill County. I support those. That is definitely something that we want to continue to support. I'm not sure that I understand the second part of that question, so I'm just going to pivot for a minute, and I'm going to talk about another area of housing. A bill that I got passed this short session was around workforce housing, and I think that all housing in Yamhill County and District 24 is so important because we have such a shortage. We need affordable housing, we need crisis housing, we need workforce housing, we need luxury housing, we need all the housing so that we can continue to bring in people and for our workforce that can also help in all of the areas of the jobs that we've talked about tonight.
that's good.
It's a complicated question. It's a good one, though, right? Because we do have a gap between, the need and how much we can supply. So whoever asked it, I feel you, and I hear you. It's a concern that I have. Over the years, I have helped a couple folks reach out to services, and it is definitely frustrating when you get told no repeatedly because the resources that are here are already full. We hear this over and over and over again. And so what happens to families as they sit and wait? They become homeless. It can lead to all sorts of different problems, and I don't have a great answer for that. That's why I think this medium that we're in right now is so important, is because we need to talk about that in between place, because people need our help, and there are children at stake, there are adults at stake, and we need more help for sure. I wish I had better answers.
The Salinas support for domestic violence victims.
Yeah, there are actually a couple of grants at the federal level for domestic violence, and whoever asked this question probably knows about those grant programs, and they have pretty much been stagnant for years. And we have not increased funding at the federal level for them, which is probably why we need more, and our counties need more. So I actually wrote to an appropriator. I can't remember if it was last year or earlier this year, probably both, since we just finished up the budget late last year for this year. Anyway, asking for more funding for this to our appropriators, both Republicans and Democrats, to say, look, we are suffering out here. Our neighbors and our communities are suffering. We need more.
Mr. Elliott.
We are fortunate to have resources here in Yamhill County for the immediate, in the moment. It's the things that come after the first day or two. We are able to get somebody into emergency shelter or placement currently, but it is very challenging for victims of domestic violence to try to start to put their life back together. One of the things that is really exciting for the county is that we are already well into the process of developing a family justice center. If you haven't heard about the Family Justice Center and what we're doing here, it's to get all of the partners together in one place rather than having victims have to go from one department to another all across the county. And so we would have those resources all together under one roof that victims could come in and be able to meet with individuals who would come to them versus making them go to everybody else.
Ms. Berschauer.
The sheriff stole my thunder on the Family Justice Center. No, I just want to say that the Board of Commissioners we've been very strong partners with phenomenal nonprofit groups in the county, Henderson House, Juliet's House. We've invested quite a bit into expanding those programs. And obviously the Family Justice Center is getting up and running, and that's going to be just a monumental shift in how we handle especially domestic violence victims. We do fund emergency housing vouchers for those specific instances. But I also want to say that the director of Juliet's House and some of those folks serve on our local public safety coordinating council. LIPSIC, it's called. And we all meet together, the commissioners, judges, heads of these nonprofits, and we all talk about how everything works together, how we can do better, how we can better serve the needs of specific individuals in specific instances. And so we really worked hard to build those partnerships in our criminal justice system.
Mr. King.
We've talked a lot tonight about mental health and homelessness, but not really the other buckets of homelessness. And domestic violence is one of those. We know in Yamhill County, I haven't seen the last one time count. I don't know if it's done yet or not. But the previous was about 1,500 homeless people in Yamhill County. And that doesn't mean that they're camping, right? That means that maybe it's safer to go sleep on a friend's couch than it is at home. Maybe it's safer for a single mom and her kids to sleep somewhere else in their car. These are a lot of problems, right? So as a commissioner, I would be pounding on the Congresswoman Salinas' door for some of that money, because I know that this is a huge need.
Thank you. Next question is for Mr. Elliott. What can or what should your department do to meet the need of street keeping?
Well, that's a complicated question because the needs of the individuals on the street really can vary. And so it is trying to spend a little bit of time to actually engage with them, to listen to them. Sometimes they don't even know what they need. And having my staff be trained to be aware of all of the resources that exist in the various cities in the county and also from the county itself, so that they can point people in the right direction. We do try to get them either vouchers or communication, a card with phone numbers and people that they need to contact, to give them the valid information and current information about where they need to go. The other thing I'll say is we just changed our handbook in the correctional facility to be like a newspaper so that they can take it with them when they leave. And the back page has all of the resources in the county for every specific need that you can think of.
This question is for Ms. Berschauer. Tonight, you make it seem as if the HHS and mental health is a priority for you. How does cutting the HHS budget by $600,000 help that mission? If your values are represented through the budget, it seems like you care more about arrests than treatment.
So mental health is not the only thing that county commissioners are responsible for. We were also responsible for many other departments and services that the public expects. And so we have a finite pool of money. And during the last budget negotiations, we had to look at shifting internally to be able to cover critical needs, staffing needs in not only the sheriff's department, but also in some other departments. And we did that by removing funding from positions that have been sitting vacant since before COVID. In fact, most of those positions and the vacancy rate that we've had is still consistent. We have invested over the past 4 years in our behavioral health department. We took state grants for bonuses, retention and recruitment bonuses. We've invested in that department. Just today, we applied and approved for another $5 million in funding for our behavioral health department so that they continue to do the work they can do. But the job of a commissioner is not just to focus solely on one department. You have to balance, and sometimes that means you make tough decisions. But I am very thankful that we did not actually lose anyone, physical employee. We cut vacant positions. Thank you.
Ms. Salinas.
Microphone. Pick up the microphone.
Ms. Salinas. I'm seeing these questions for the first time, and I'm trying to figure out how to read it intelligently. As intelligently as the question is written. Do you support eliminating federal income tax on SSI?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. Easy question. Yes. If you are getting disability, yes. Good. If you are receiving disability insurance through Social Security, we should not be taxing you. There's probably a reason that you need that additional insurance. And I think I am on a bill, actually, that would eliminate that tax.
And I think we all could.
Thank you. This question is for candidates for commissioners, for commissioner. Financial and recreational benefits of walking, biking, and camping are high. Will you support the Yamhill Trail in McMinnville to Banks? Well, Ms. Berschauer, I'll go first.
I get this question every day. I don't see a path forward to it. Honestly, there's a lot of hurt feelings. I would, if somebody could get creative and find a way, I wouldn't do anything without talking to the people that are most affected by this, and that's farmers. So I believe in those personal property rights. I believe in these things. I love recreation. I want to see more of it in our county, but I don't see a path forward to it today. So it's a fun question, but I think really that Ms. Berschauer.
The question was about the Yamhill West Sider Trail. We withdrew the application and foreclosed upon the trail. It is not going forward, and the reason it's not going forward is because it does not pass all of the land use requirements to go forward. The farmers who own the generational farmland on either side of the trail sue the county because the county was not following through on the farm impact work. Basically, you have to mitigate the economic damage to the farmers who live alongside the trail before you can move forward. Otherwise, you don't have land use approval. So we withdrew the application. I will say that we have beautiful parks. We have, over 20 parks, and my husband and I and our family did the Parks Quest. They are absolutely stunning, so I highly encourage you to visit our parks. And there's even a new bike park that's being planned on BLM land, kind of up above High Heaven Road. So there are options coming. They may not look like the trail, but we have plenty of beautiful parks, and I highly encourage you to use them.
Thank you. The next question is sort of an open question. I will do it by volunteer. If there's anyone who would like to address this question, please do. Why don't we invest more in the prevention of mental illness and the promotion of mental health? Would you like to start?
Thank you for the question. So that is the reason I think we do need to focus more on children and kids in our classrooms and really addressing kids when we see these pop up. I continue to say that, and this is why it's such a big issue for me at the federal level, because there's such a nexus between mental illness, addiction, our foster care system, education, when we see room clears, and none of it feels very functional right now, and it all goes back to the need, and people need to be cared for. I keep thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could address the need when it starts to arise? It'll be more or less costly and more affordable, and we will save a lot of heartache.
Anyone else who is cool?
So I definitely agree. It really starts in children, right? If we can raise healthy, functional children, they turn into healthy, functional adults. And Oregon is really failing when it comes to our educational system. If you look around at different states, the amount of money that we're investing in education is dismal. We're rated very low. And I see evidence of that. I grew up in the Midwest, and I'm going to tell you, I got a far superior education in the Midwest than I did here, and it's because the investment dollars are there. We do not have the investment dollars, and if we did, I think that would actually catch a lot of the issues before they blossom into something more. And I hear about it all the time as a provider about the lack of investment that people had in high school and how it's impacting them as they move forward. and we're not giving the kids the education that they need, the resources they need to be successful. We're not supporting our teachers. It just snowballs from there. So I know I'm limited, but this is an area I'm very passionate about. We definitely need a lot more investment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Elmer?
I'll continue on with the education. So sitting on the Early Childhood Education Board gave me the opportunity to have a front row seat to DELP, which is the Department of Early Learning and Care. It was a newly formed government agency. And we have preschool Cronus dollars and we have Head Start dollars, and we're tripping up over both, and we're still not serving all of the kids that we need to serve. So there was a deep dive done into where is the money going, how was it spent. Ms. Poole is correct, we are underfunded by a lot. And the question has been raised over and over, why aren't we? Why aren't we doing this? There were many bill pulls that we did to the House floor that were voted down, and I'm not sure why, but we will continue to have the conversation because Congresswoman Salinas is also right. This does need to start with the early learner because it is much more cost effective, and we do want every child to be the most that they can be and the best they can be.
Anyone else would like to comment about why we don't spend more, put more effort into mental health?
I just want to mention that Yamhill County does have programs that other counties don't have. The ESA program, you're probably familiar with it if you're in the room. The ESA program is about early assessment, catching kids when they have the first episode, and making sure that there's wraparound and treatment supports for them, as well as the family. I was talking to someone earlier about their struggles with their son or daughter, and a lot of the support needs is with the family. So we do have some programs that are just unique to our county, and it's because we have such a great we've had great leadership in the past around a restoration, around in focusing those dollars in our CJC or our criminal justice system to provide those supports. I also want to say that we invested our workforce, especially law enforcement, right? Making sure that the mental health of our sheriff's deputies and his team, given what they see on a day-to-day basis, that they are staying healthy as well. So we do invest quite a bit.
Anyone else? Okay, this is a question. I will test your innermost thinking. Ms. Salinas, what do you think is the single biggest problem facing this country?
Oh, you forgot. The one knows. They like to hear enemies. Oh my God! I should think that's people. You have been great.
There are so many problems. How to choose one? I will say, from my lens at the federal level, and it is truly why. So, for folks who don't know, I serve on 3 committees. I serve on the House Agriculture Committee, the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and the Executive Commission on China. Clearly, none of those have jurisdiction over mental health. Mental health and substance use is the only issue that I have taken on pretty much outside of my committees of jurisdiction. I actually think this is going to be the issue that either we fail or we succeed as a country. And if we don't address it, we are going to fail, which is why I think it needs to be elevated in a way that we have never seen before. So I really do think this is the number one issue.
Ms. Elmer, what do you think is the biggest issue facing state?
You just got bypassed that.
The biggest issue facing this state, so I'll just keep it in my professional role, and that is the divisiveness. It's not that the state legislators are in the building fighting. We work really hard to build relationships and work with one another, but the media and the general society culture that we are in loves to just elevate this nastiness. And it's really hard to then do your job when you have to combat that first before you can even get to the issues of the heart or the issues that matter. So that really, it just sets us back. Sets us back too many paces, I think, so that and that we can't get in there and do our job effectively. I work really hard to build relationships. I think that that's so valuable, and that's truly where you're going to be able to move the dial. You build the relationship, you get the respect, and you work together. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Cool, what do you think is the single largest issue facing the state army?
It's a good one. Absolutism is killing us, right? That everything has to be 100% decided or fixed, or there has to be, everything has to be perfectly aligned in order for us to move forward on anything. In reality, that's just not how life is, right? So we need to consider what it is to move forward on a plan. And that means that as we take steps, as we look at problems and we tackle each piece, we're not necessarily going to get to 100% all the time. The goal is to get there. But if we don't allow the opportunity for us to move forward on topics and allow ourselves to fail, we're also never going to succeed. And so I feel like what we keep seeing is this me versus we, that we're always looking at, like, if I don't have 100% of what it is that I want, then nobody can have anything. And we have to stop that. Because as you look up here, there's Republicans and Democrats and everything in between, right up here. And you've heard that we have a lot of overlapping. So we want to build on that and then keep going.
Mr. Elliott, what do you think is the single largest issue, single largest problem facing Yamhill County?
Well, it's right here. Yeah, it's hard to narrow it to one thing. But I think you could apply it to the county level, the state level, the national level, and that is just the lack of regard for others, and whether that is respect of their individual rights, respect of their property, respect of the sanctity of life. We have devalued the importance of the sanctity of individuals, to not have to be in fear when they go down the street with what is going to happen to their property, if their items are going to be stolen, if they're going to be a victim of a violent crime. Just having that respect for others, for individuals, to respect that what they have is theirs, and also to be in support of each other, and not be divisive and arguing over things that we probably agree on 80% of what's going on out there.
Thank you. Ms. Berschauer, what do you think is the single largest issue, problem facing Yamhill?
Well, I mean, amen to what the sheriff said. I think my perspective is a little bit unique because I came in during COVID and everything was shut down. And I think one of the things that frustrates me is that there seems to be, sort of coming out of COVID, is this expectation that government can solve all problems. Government cannot and will not solve all problems. We've seen what that looks like during COVID. It was a disaster. And what I've also seen is a lot of isolation after COVID. We seem to have sort of gone to our respective silos. And it's feeding this cycle of people feeling like they're just on the edge. And there's so much uncertainty. There's no security. Our kids are losing hope. The cost of living is astronomical. It's driving people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. And it's unhealthy for our society. And so I guess that's the biggest challenge. I feel like I come to work every day and I sort of wear that on my shoulders because it is all connected. And I just hope that we can get back to not feeling so isolated and starting to build the groups and the teams and the churches and the nonprofits and all of these people that used to solve those problems, that used to solve societal problems. We've lost a lot of that. I hope we get back to it.
Mr. Karen?
I'll echo a little bit of what everybody said. I think ultimately in Yamhill County and the country and Oregon, it's the polarity that we have. Our county is made up of three different kind of factions, right? And if you're not on my side, then you're wrong. And I hate that. It couldn't be more divisive. It couldn't be more destructive to our community. And I think that's why that representation is so important, is that people feel heard. And I think that is one issue that I would love to help be a solution.
Thank you all. that, we'll take 1 minute each candidate, starting with this Berschauer, to wrap up.
Well, it's been an honor to serve as the Yamhill County Commissioner for the past 4 years. It's been an interesting ride. I've mentioned COVID several times. And I think that, when you come into office, you have all these great ideas. I really was focused on a recovery high school. We have one over in Clackamas County, and it's phenomenal. And there's nothing worse for me than seeing a child lose hope and fall into addiction. So that was my number one goal, and then COVID. And I think that leadership is about adjusting when you need to, and my focus has now adjusted and to meet the needs of the community. And so my number one goal now is a detox residential treatment facility. You've heard all of us talk about it. That is something that needs to happen. We are cobbling together the funds for it. We are bringing in the partners. But we need to see that in the next 4 years, and that is one of my top goals for the next term. Thank you for coming tonight.
Mr. King.
I will, again, just say it's a big honor for me to be even in this room up here with some of these people. It's been really great. I've been working at this for about 1.5 years now, and I can't wait for November 5th. And the importance of really voting down ballot. I think everybody's excited to vote for president right now, or at least most people are, no matter who you're voting for. And I can't wait, right? This is been a very interesting, wild ride. And thank you guys so much for all the support that you've given. And I hope to live up to all of the things that I've been able to talk about this tonight and for the last 1.5 years. So thank you guys.
Mr. Elliott.
Well, as an unopposed candidate, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's really important to me to be out there and meeting with you folks, and for you to know that we are accessible, that I am accessible to you. You as the voters are my boss. You are the ones that I report to. You're the ones that I'm accountable to. And I strongly believe in the legacy of the Office of Sheriff and the tradition of Yamhill County Sheriff's Office and the work that gets done in the community. If you ever have a concern or a question, my phone number is posted everywhere. You can walk into the office. I love to meet with individuals and to hear from you directly, and that is always available to you. So if you feel like my executive assistant is not getting the message through, just call me directly. So I appreciate being here tonight, and thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Ms. Salinas.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is clearly an important issue to me. I hope you understood that it's a personal issue for me as well, and I want to continue this work. So I intend to get reelected. I intend to continue working on mental health, behavioral health, and addiction issues, and I need to hear from you. So you can reach me at salinas.house.gov. It's a great way to send me an email. If you go there, you can also get my phone numbers. I have an office in Salem, office in Tualatin, also my DC office. But I need to hear from you because you're my eyes and ears on the ground. You know what's happening and you know what needs to be fixed. And I'm your conduit for that. So I just represent you, but thank you again for having me. Thank you for voting on November 5th.
Ms. Elmer.
Thank you. NAMI, thank you for hosting this forum and just for being so thoughtful with your passion for the mental health conversation. I appreciate it. This forum, this is my second time, and it's just done well. It's well attended, and there's great questions. So thank you. I am also thankful to my constituents because, being 50 plus years old and deciding to pivot and do something brand new that's not in your wheelhouse, something you've never done before. It's not easy, but it has been quite the honor, and I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to learn so much. My eyes have been opened, and I've truly enjoyed being your representative. Ditto to everything. My door is open, my office is open, my phone lines are open. I am here to serve you. Thank you.
This pool.
last but not least, I hope, I also want to echo what everybody has said. This is really great for all of you to be here, and you're still here at 9 o'clock at night when I'm sure many of you would like to be on the couch snuggled with your fur baby and chillaxing with some Netflix. So thanks for making the hall all the way to the end. I just want to say that I think it's really important that we have representation that is of all the people that are sitting in the room. And I always want to say thank you to all the people who are up here and doing this and being up here and talking about it, because this is how we are going to get better as a country, is if we are here and we're having these conversations. So thank you for having this forum be here and allowing us all the opportunity to talk with you. It just kind of engage on a very difficult topic that needs a lot more attention. I'll just end with that. It's been my honor to be a community advocate, and whether or not I win or not, I will still be your community advocate. So if there's a way that I can be supportive to you on November 5th, as well as on November 6th, I will still be here. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, candidates, for your willingness. For your contributions, your state, your county, your community. We are grateful for the time and effort that you put in, and we know that this is a commitment of your life. The flood, face you, you're not just doing it for fun, I'm sure. You're doing it because you're here. Thank you all for carrying it on to come and to spend, becoming, getting educated and be knowledgeable and informed voter on the election coming up in a couple of weeks. Thank you all. Good night.